Somehow I ended on the perfect number of parts. Huh.
How about that?
Welcome back to Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Welcome to the Final Fantasy VII Remake grand finale, at least until Intergrade comes out. Hopefully that'll be a side episode so I can record it easily. Wow, everyone's faces are magically made of plastic now. It's almost as if our in-game graphics have actually surpassed our CGI. Yeah. Either that or Tidus is just... Cloud is just wearing Tidus's face. Or Tidus is wearing Cloud's hair. That's possible. Yeah. He does look a lot like Tidus for some reason. It's something about the way the mouth and face moves in Square's CGI that hasn't really changed since Final Fantasy X.
They look a lot more Japanese here than they do in-game.
Well, I mean, that was kind of always the case, though. I think it was, like, starting with Advent Children.
A lot of people don't really understand that a lot of anime characters are supposed to look more Japanese than they kind of do.
It depends on the series.
It depends on the art style, really. But, like...
Yeah.
Okay, so... It's time. We're gonna fight the man himself. Sephiroth. He who was invited to Smash. No, he wasn't invited to Smash. Let's not kid ourselves.
He followed.
He just showed up.
Yeah.
He's that powerful. So, yeah.
Now I shall show you despair.
The first thing he does is casually drop a building on you. Literally. I get the feeling that they were taking the piss by having him do that. But it's a very Advent Children moment.
This is
with him chopping
Everything
through
else,
actual metal. With
like this is we are now in Advent Children.
Never
stuff.
mind what
like,
he's chopping through. His sword should not be long enough to chop through any of that. Is the thing. Maybe Sephiroth's
also
was,
best version of One Winged Angel.
This is a fantastic
yes.
rendition of one game.
Now, the build-up during this boss fight is incredibly hype because you start with just Cloud, and it's, a rival face-off. And at certain climactic moments, as the boss advances to the next phase, your second and third party members will appear. At some point, my affection values reversed themselves, and Aerith became the favored character after the date scene, after the dream sequence or whatever. So Aerith shows up first, and I'm kind of glad that happened because she has the best fucking line.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
We'll get to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I wasn't expecting
what
it, but
Sephiroth's purpose for fighting us here other than being a dick at the moment?
Just to be a dick.
Okay, because, listen, I'm gonna be a wet blanket again, and I know that that's everyone's favorite thing. But regardless of the quality of
Ted, you shouldn't feel any sort of bad if you have a legitimate critique about something.
Oh, no critique I ever have is legitimate. I don't know what you're talking about.
Anyway, continue your point.
Regardless of the quality of the boss fights, I think that from a story perspective, it makes way more sense for Sephiroth to not be the final boss and for the Whispers to be the final boss. Granted, I will say that as for the quality of the fight, like, this is stupid anime bullshit, but it's cool stupid anime bullshit, so, I get it. But, like...
The only thing I have to say to counter that is we're still not entirely sure what Sephiroth's plan is.
Yeah, but it's just... I went over this before. I feel like some restraint would have gone a long way. And maybe I feel like blowing your load now and just like, okay, feeling like you have to put in Sephiroth fight, you have to play One Winged Angel... I feel like you didn't need to really.
Yeah, that's what I said, because I really hope episode 2 and 3, however far they go, don't end with another Sephiroth battle, because you blew your load in this one.
It depends on how they execute that narratively. I think it would be interesting if Sephiroth did fight you again in part 2, but it was a mid-game boss instead of a final boss.
Yeah, I was like, no, I'm not against the idea of fighting Sephiroth again, not as final boss though.
Yeah.
Because you blew that load.
It's coming.
Here. You pulled the trigger on that here.
It's happening. The line. Here it comes.
Oh my god, Cloud, you're such an asshole.
Jesus. It's a tsundere.
That screw him at the end of that is fantastic.
Cloud's like, he's tough.
You're right. Who does give a shit?
Cloud's like, he's tough to warn her, and she's like, yeah, so what? Screw him.
Yeah.
Because I absolutely get what you were talking about earlier, Lewis, in that there is really no fight you have against real Sephiroth. The best view of his power that we see isn't even like when we see him at full power. It's during the flashback where you see him in your party and he kicks ass and takes names, and he's supposed to be stronger than that now, and we just never see it.
Yeah.
So, like, I absolutely get that. I feel like I don't really like that he's as predominant in the game as he is, but I can understand that's just a personal preference thing. I think that if the whole point of this game is we're going to change fate, we're going to do things our own way, the best way to end the game then is to finish it off by beating the Whispers and, like, having fate be open for whatever to happen.
On the subject of that, though, there is something interesting that happens during the boss fight. When Sephiroth's wing disappears, it dissolves into a bunch of whispers, and I'm not really sure what to make of it.
Earlier once you destroyed the Fate Whisper thing, he straight up absorbed it all.
So
he can control destiny itself.
Supposedly, yeah. So I think the point of the boss is we're beating it out of him.
So I'm not really. It's not really clear what he did but it's clear he had a reason for being here at the very least. It's just a little unclear how the mechanics of that reason work.
Yeah. And my opinion on whether or not this is appropriate as a boss fight will depend entirely on what they do final boss story-wise going forward. Because if they don't use Sephiroth much and they find a different way to use it, it's good to get at least a Sephiroth fight in there.
Yeah, it does depend a lot on what they do in the future parts. The narrative flow of Final Fantasy VII Remake will make a lot more sense for good or ill once we have more of the story to go with, because we are essentially looking at what is likely the first act of a trilogy. So...
And again, there is merit in this fight by just being a direct one-on-one encounter with the dude, which has never been done before. In 7.
It's a really goddamn fun boss fight, and if I may say so, deceptively hard, because when you start off with just Cloud, all right, you might think you've got Sephiroth's number using your counters, your counterattacks and counter stance skill the way you would against Roche, but then every single phase he ups the game. By the end of the fight, he can seriously mess you up if you don't stay on your toes. I think on my first playthrough I lost. I know Maximilian Dude lost on his first play against Sephiroth. It is actually the kind of final boss that can realistically defeat you if you don't know what's happening. If you don't.
Yeah, I prefer final bosses that actually can win and not just be glorified cinematics.
Yeah, it's like, I haven't had a final boss encounter like that in a Final Fantasy game since 9. So in that...
I assume you're talking about Necron and not Transkuja.
Well, yeah, Necron. Necron was a pain in the ass.
Necron was a legit final boss. It wasn't like he was like the victory
even
lap.
Even if you do like pile on all the anti-status ailment skills that you can at the end, Necron can still...
He just does so much damage.
Yeah, Necron can still mess you up pretty hard if you're not careful. You do need to have a well-balanced party, and you need to keep the pressure on him while keeping your own HP up. So, unless you're like absurdly over-leveled, he's going to give you trouble. But Sephiroth here, this feels like the Virgil fight from Devil May Cry 3 or Devil May Cry 5.
This is the fight we've wanted with Sephiroth for basically since the original came out.
The only Sephiroth boss that I would say that trumps this is the original Kingdom Hearts one, and that one was literally a super boss. So,
the Kingdom Hearts 2 fight is better, but I still love the.
I didn't like the Kingdom Hearts 2 boss. I thought he went down too easy. Maybe that was just my experience.
Well, because you are way more capable, sure, but I think that Sephiroth was more able. I just like his moveset more in that one than in Kingdom Hearts 1.
I don't think he was more able. Maybe he had more moves that flowed into each other, but they also didn't seem all that difficult to deal with.
Because Kingdom Hearts 1 Sephiroth he had basic sword swipes. He had his own Omni Slash in Phase 2. Then he started running all over the place. Then he had the aerial dive, and then the meteors, and that was pretty much it. Sephiroth had multiple combos in Kingdom Hearts 2.
I don't like combos. Combos are just how long can we disable player control. which is interesting in a multiplayer context. Which is
Hey, Sephiroth, that's not fair. You're supposed to have like 23 frames of end lag after
look,
that.
a combo is interesting in a multiplayer fighting game type complex because the other player had to pull that off, and they had to put you in a situation where you were locked long enough for them to initiate and maintain a combo. When an AI does it, it's just annoying.
I mean, it's a one-on-one encounter. Does it really matter if it's human?
When I fought Virgil in Devil May Cry 3, I never felt like I was comboed for any length of time, but that didn't make him easy. It's like the quality of the moves and the maneuvers you have to pull off to avoid those moves. And
at the same time, though, you know, you getting comboed as a punishment for not being able to read the boss correctly. You know.
I mean, in some case, like, obviously it's not fun to be hit, but like you still get to see the enemy
but
hit
you don't
want
to fight a fucking
which
you don't want to
cool.
It's like you don't want to fight a fucking like road
That's
dummy.
the thing.
The boss
that's
has
the
to
thing,
fight
though.
back.
You can get punished without being disabled for an annoying length of time. Is the thing.
At the very least, it's not an infant from Marvel Capcom 3.
Yeah, that was actually what I was going to bring up, is that in some fighting games, when you lose, it's just kind of like whoever gets the first punch in kind of wins, and then you're just sitting there. You can put your controller down for
Some
30
fighting
seconds.
games do have broken combo systems in that some of the combos can technically fill the entire health bar, which is
I
not
love how
something
Dan
that
had an infinite in Street Fighter V for a little bit.
Oh man.
Did they patch out a... Oh, man, that's like nerfing Pichu in Smash Brothers. It's wrong.
Well, no, it's still there, but it's a bit luck-based now. As a
Final Phase Sephiroth here is such a pain in the ass. Alright, for one thing, all of his attacks are magic. Also, there's a hell of a lot of rapid-fire knockback. So...
just bounce around, and then there's only tilt,
If you get-
tilt.
if you get hit by Shadow Flare, you do become a pinball. But, as I said, all of his attacks now are magic, so this was a useless play. I probably should have just used Refocus.
It's like at the end of the animation, so I'm just standing next to her and just fucking backhand her. Like, what were you thinking?
So, yeah, all of his
This
attacks...
is also on a time limit.
All of his attacks are magic-based. He's counting down to, like, the big-ass supernova move, which I've never seen, by the way. It does take a while.
No, neither have I. I've won the fight before
But
it happened.
he's also, like, extremely aggressive while he's counting down. But he doesn't have that much health left, so if you can get Aerith to double cast without being sucker punched, then
He said it.
he also
said the thing,
I'm
boys.
not into produce.
he also
Okay,
has
Sephiroth, do it. Say the line.
he also has Heartless Angel, which is area of effect, by the way, and reduces characters' HP to 1, as it did in the original game. So bust out those elixirs. This is why
Where's
I say
the move that takes 3 minutes to complete the animation for, so I can take a potty break?
Supernova.
probably the
That's
one
what
he's counting down
to.
to, yeah. But
So it's
we're-
okay. It doesn't even matter if he hits us with it.
But we're not going to see that because I finished him off with the most Final Fantasy play ever. A double cast directly into a summon special attack. Fucking perfect. And Aerith got to finish him off, which is like the most poetic thing ever.
By Meteor.
Sephiroth defeated.
Or was he?
And now we get our anime as fuck. Hype as hell. Like, the main character is rushing to confront the rival character and everyone else is
Now that's not fair.
supporting
You're
him.
supposed to have a party of 3.
You know, Dirge of Cerberus had a moment like this, and it was cheesy as fuck because of the way the presentation was handled. It was like split screen and everything. But here, it's like, boom! Aerith busts out lightning. Red 13 gets his dramatic moment in the sun. Why are you here? You're not a party member. Tifa punches one to dust, and then Barrett gets to be the last
Barrett's
one, which is
covering you.
oddly, yeah.
Wait, I thought we already killed the Whispers, though.
Well, no, Sephiroth is still using them. That's why we're trying to
Yeah,
beat them.
but we're
out of
saying
them.
Okay,
Yeah,
it
that's what we were
feels
talking
like
about
none
earlier.
of this is properly explained.
None of it is.
You have to watch the cutscenes. Yeah.
Good observation. That is one thing that I will not disagree with you on. But, like, I feel like there is enough here that you can intuit some of it, but it's a little bit esoteric.
I mean, we're also, like, not... I'm watching on a commentary. Definitely not looking at other stuff while we would be working. I would never do that. But...
Are you playing Splatoon
guys-
again?
No.
Working. You guys get paid?
And then we get to see another classic moment, which probably won't happen in the remake series after this now.
I would have.
Yeah, I was gonna say-
based on where this is and Sephiroth says it is, I would have loved it as a stupid little cameo in the background. You just see Necron floating by.
Oh, he's holding his hand.
Playing,
Oh my god. Oh my god, the gay.
Happy-
Oh man.
Happy Pride Month.
Okay, don't.
Lot.
You've read it. You read Final Fantasy VII fan fiction, haven't you?
I haven't. I don't need
absolutely.
to have read Final Fantasy VII fan fiction.
Oh yeah, you're right. In every fandom ever, the evil rival character and the main character must like secretly be horny for each other. It's
It helps that there's no like rival friend character for Hero to be gay with in Final Fantasy VII. Like Barrett, not really. Doesn't really work. Red 13's a dog, so that really only has that. Like, there's certainly an audience for that. Don't get me wrong, but it's a limited one.
and Sid's too old. That's just creepy.
So it's Sephiroth's the real yaoi bait.
Join me, and we will rule the galaxy together as.
Sephiroth's lines in this scene are interesting. Like, he seems to genuinely want Cloud to join him. Although why he
He also looks wonderfully amused by the fact that he gets to do this again.
I don't get why Sephiroth on any world would think that Cloud would join him.
I don't think he did. Look at the look on his face after Cloud turns him down. It's just like, yeah, that's about what I expected.
Also, it's interesting because obviously we'll see at the end, Sephiroth wins this fight because he's already fought it before.
The thing is, like, also, this is like a more like
Also, it turns into Bleach for a second.
Yeah, I know. It's like, what the fuck was the Dragon Ball shit going on there? for a
but
second?
at the same time, this is just a more choreographed fight than any of the shit in Advent Children. Like, the stuff they're doing with
For
the
sure.
sword is a lot more.
But yeah, because they're not flying 50 feet in the air with every sword.
Yeah,
swing.
and Advent Children was just like, they sort of substituted flippy-dippy bullshit and buildings being sliced in half for actual choreography half the time.
Yeah.
So,
7 seconds.
no, this is a legitimately creepy line.
Time enough for you.
Where you sort of think Sephiroth's about to stab Cloud to death.
But what will you do
But-
with it?
Overly ambiguous, though, because you don't know what the hell he's talking about.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
Like, what's the 7 seconds? he's
7
referring
seconds
to?
till the
What's
end.
With the edge of creation.
7 seconds till the end really just gives me Final Fantasy 13 flashbacks about the 13 days.
I don't
We'll
get
have to see.
like, could he not
7
kill
remake
Cloud
seconds
there?
until the end.
Was that
Well,
in his
that's the-
brain?
well, that's the thing. We don't know what his goal is.
The
at
final
this
battle
point,
against
so-
Yeah.
Sephiroth in Final Fantasy VII, that cutscene battle with the Omni Slash, was always in Cloud's head. So, yeah, that was definitely in Cloud's brain.
That's right.
More of the hallucinatory bullshit, but
Hey, Heidegger, bite my shiny metal ass.
So that's what it feels like.
in that case, it was a fully developed Cloud who knew the truth, throwing Sephiroth off. But he hasn't managed to do that yet.
Again, this is just episode 1 of this remake. We are not entirely sure what Sephiroth's endgame is, but we do know that like the biggest takeaway from this is that things are going to be radically different from this point
If
on.
only Square had a reputation for not royally screwing up everything that they try to set up over multiple game storylines, then maybe we could all be uniformly excited for this. As it is, cautious
High
optimism.
Emperor pose.
I mean, regardless of whether or not it's a good idea, it's working because
For now.
it generated. Yeah, obviously for now, but it's got people up in arms for the next episode because they want to see where the hell are they going with this.
Well, unfortunately, that's just kind of the appeal of the mystery box. Like,
You're right.
remember
Curse you,
in
J.J.
2009
Abrams.
when nobody
Yeah, I
would
know,
shut up about
seriously.
Lost? You know, and then look at how people were when they actually finished Lost.
Yeah. I agree.
One thing that hasn't changed from the original timeline is that Hojo is still intentionally trying to manipulate the whole reunion thing, so he is absolutely on board with Genova escaping. That's just another experiment to him.
Here's the thing. The optimist in me feels that 7 is too big for them to fuck up, but then I think of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Also, Zack lives.
Zack managed to just barely scrape out a win. This kind of feels like me when I finally defeated Sephiroth in Kingdom Hearts. Like, 1 HP, 2 HP, something like that, and he's finally dead.
When he finally beat that SNK boss.
You get that Frodo meme image where it's like it's over.
But this is an alternate
finally over.
universe.
Yes.
And you know, he kind of does look like.
The only reason why we say that is because the design of the
stand.
dog is different.
Wait,
on
what
the
dog?
bag.
The design of the dog is different, but also this is like literally backwards in time because he's talking to Cloud, who's behind one of the rocks over there.
So Ted, as this scene was beginning, they deliberately show a close up of the bag with the dog on it, Stampy, the Shinra propaganda dog, and it's a different breed of dog compared to.
I've been told
the
that it's
original.
actually just an older character design from the same timeline, but I don't know. I've never saw any evidence. For that
I
in the
think
game.
you don't show off the design in that way without highlighting that it's a different breed.
It's like it's like I've heard that it's the same timeline and it just had multiple designs over time, but also like
Right.
I haven't seen any evidence of that in game. So is it
No,
is it
because
from
there's
one
no
of the
evidence. There's no foreshadowing earlier in the game that Zack is still alive.
is it from one of the in-game manuscripts that you can get in New Game Plus or what? I don't know where
No.
people are drawing that idea from.
No, I don't know where anyone's getting that either. Because there's no hint anywhere in the game that Zack is still alive.
Okay, because that just seems like it's there just to confuse people.
I'm not saying that it's the same timeline. I'm saying that like people are telling me that I misinterpreted the wrapper, and it's like, okay,
No.
where are you getting that information from? But like, yeah, okay, so Zack is alive in the universe next door. Possible Crisis Core sequels incoming, and then back home, the Sector 7 people are starting to rebuild. How much money did you get for those 3 priceless tiaras I graciously donated to you, Marl?
Yeah, 10,000 gil. Aw.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I feel like they're gonna bring Zack into this universe and not do a Crisis Core sequel.
I don't
Like,
really see why they would. That sounds like a
because
stupid idea.
fan service. We were talking about what extra playable characters they could add, Zack.
Cloud,
Zack's a perfectly
Cloud 2.0. It's literally Cloud. I don't really think they would. I
And
think
how
that-
many Marths are in Fire Emblem?
I think there's enough going on.
Also, hi, Biggs.
I think there's more than enough going on in this timeline that they would just convolute things by doing that. I think
And
Zack
Square
is.
has never convoluted their own games.
They don't
by adding
need-
too much in.
They don't need to bring Zack into this timeline to have him interact with the other characters. Those characters exist in his timeline. So they could just make a second series based on that sequence of events. And that would effectively double the amount of story that they could work with here. So, you know, there's no reason not to do it that way. Final Fantasy VII could literally last until after we're all dead with this current setup. We'll never see how it all
Final
ends.
Fantasy VII, again, on PlayStation 9. Your thing.
So, like, yeah. You know what it is that kind of bugs me about the CGI versions of these characters? It's kind of like you can't quite as clearly see the texture of their skin as you could in game. So, like, they feel more plasticky from a distance. Combine that with the way the mouths and stuff move, and it's just off-putting. You didn't see it quite as much in the CGI in the Shinra building, because the focus of that was on the ancients and the environments and the wide sweeping landscape porn shots. But, like,
Cloud,
here-
don't touch that. Birds are dirty animals. You're gonna get sick.
Man, you know, my mother and every other adult in my life told me that very same thing whenever I would pick up a feather off the ground. You're killing my dreams of owning a Harry Potter quill, goddammit. Ugh. I mean, I know I
Listen,
could buy
if you
one.
want to get all of the
but-
diseases, then go right ahead. I'm just saying.
I know I could buy one, but that would take money.
Oh yes, and going around and trying to get a feather off of a bird is a much better idea on that front. Like the health insurance payment alone is like 17,000 times more than the $30 it takes for a Harry Potter quill that you'd get at Barnes & Noble or wherever.
Anyway, the group is all ready to set out, by which I mean they have no luggage, they have no food stores, and it's starting to rain, and there are no caves in sight because all of Midgar is surrounded by barren, empty flatland without any trees or anything. So,
It's not too long of a walk from Calm though.
So this shot kind of confuses people on first watch because it does look like they're
Yeah,
all
it-
walking toward each other, but no, it's just like artistic, like
one universe clashing with another in a way.
sort of overlapping the two shots to sort of parallel them. Zack and Cloud heading toward Midgar, while Cloud and his party in the main timeline move away. Neither of them aware of the other.
No,
Although-
Aerith knows what's going on.
Aerith might be semi-aware, but she's actually
I think
thinking
she's
of
aware.
something entirely different. She's looking down at her hand in the rain. She looks up and says a line that got the fans frothing at the mouth because it's a betrayal of their made-up character that they made up in their heads. I miss it, the steel sky. Like, they're like, no, Aerith should hate Midgar or something. No, why would she? There's never been anything.
never having
Never
to
lived
deal
it.
with the rain is a plus. I will say.
Yeah, I
that.
know.
She's never lived anywhere else.
She's never lived anywhere else, and there's like, she was way too young when she was like up in Snowy Town, in the far north to really remember that.
She was just a little baby.
Yeah, so like all she knows is the slums, and based on both the original game and this game, it seems like she had a good life there. So she's leaving home for the first time. It makes sense that she would say something like this, especially since it's raining. Nobody likes being caught in the rain.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe it's not that deep, and she just misses the steel sky because it's a makeshift.
Nobody
umbrella.
likes getting caught in the rain under normal circumstances where it's grassy or you have sidewalk to walk on, but consider this. They're out in the middle of the desert and it's raining. They're going to be trudging through mud for the next 8 hours. It's going to suck. It's going to suck so bad.
Actually, no. Not to mention if there starts thunderstorming, clouds one giant conduit.
And also think about it this way: they're on an open field, random encounters. I mean, come on, who wants to deal with that bull?
This is the first negative consequence of destroying the Whispers. The weather changed. For the worse. It's an omen, I tell you.
Yeah, it's an ill omen.
Yeah,
It does like potentially give us an interesting like first opening scene for part 2 though, where you're out in the wilderness and it's raining. That's a striking image to imagine in my head, and I can see it going into a couple different opening
I
scenarios.
see the game immediately starting off in calm.
potentially too. Yeah.
I think there
Yeah.
might be a tutorial section out in the wilderness that you play through to get a handle on the gameplay, and then it
There
transitions
should be a
into
crafting
calm.
system.
I-
You gotta hunt
I don't
foxes.
think it would. I don't think it would start in calm because that's a bit too calm as an opening. A bit too drawn out, I would say. So they're definitely going to include the flashback. They wouldn't be crazy enough to skip over that. So they have to do something before calm to give the game kind of a hook to get players in.
So that's actually something I was thinking about in that, okay, they very obviously leaned heavy into nostalgia for this remake, but they also wanted to say, okay, we're going to do stuff that's different. So that's what I'm wondering about for the next game. It's like, okay, are you actually going to do stuff that's different, or are you just going to do all the stuff that happened in the original game because people want to see it being remade? You know, it's like you're being pulled in two different directions.
I think
when you
they're
do
gonna.
that.
I think what they're gonna do is play around with the butterfly effect. They're going to play around with how the things they set up in this game affect the things that happen in the second part. Because,
All right, I forgot Ryuji
like,
was a bear.
we have Biggs,
I mean, Red 13.
possibly Wedge, and a very small maybe on Jesse being alive. And obviously the three Avalanche guys aren't going to want to sit around and let their friends run around in the wilderness without them. So they're probably going to set off and chase Cloud and Barrett and the others down. And how is that going to affect things? And what about Yuffie? We don't know what happened in Intergrade yet, but it seems like her...
No, I have it.
You have it?
At the start of part 2, since Biggs and Wedge are still alive, it starts up with them walking across the desert, but in mechs. It's Final Fantasy VI again.
Oh, it's Final Fantasy VI.
We no, but destroying the Whispers had a strange effect on reality, and now the different Final Fantasy games are merging, and no one can...
So you mean Dissidia?
Can we not have it be
They're
Dissidia?
like actively merging and melding universes, like in some weird comic book arc, and things are starting to overlap,
on
and,
Infinite Fantasies.
and Cloud and Terra become one person.
Man, because as we all know, the comic events where they merge universes together always turn out great.
worked the first time,
those
but-
never turn out badly, ever.
To their credit, the first time it did work, but
Okay, and how many times after has it happened?
I didn't actually
rarely.
know that they had actually done that in comics. I just thought it sounded like a comic book arc. So that's
no,
good
it
to know.
happens all the time in both.
Oh no!
both DC.
Oh no! Oh,
That's
no.
what. Whenever you see a comic arc in DC called Crisis, they're combining
That's
worlds
what
or
they're doing.
separating worlds or some
Yeah.
bullshit. You know.
Yeah.
Because it worked once in the 80s, and they just can't get enough of that.
Oh,
Okay.
And it actually had a purpose in the 80s. That's why it worked.
Yeah, because comic book writing in the 80s, that's something you want to replicate.
Well, it's also partly because back in the 60s and 70s, they were still buying characters, and everything was so super separate, it was hard to keep track of. So, like, fuck it, we'll just find a way to bring it all together.
I apparently skipped a lot of the credits in this sequence. But like,
well, we got through the music part, so that's...
there's a
what
long
mostly
sequence
matters
where
here.
it's showing cutscenes and stuff, but like my recording fucked up in the middle of the credits, so I kind of had to download what credits there are from YouTube.
It's fine. The rest is just, the scroll-up credits with the in-game cutscenes playing.
Yeah,
so it's not a huge
it
deal.
takes quite a while to get through those, though. So
Yeah.
I spared you all some pain by having a glitchy recording software, I guess.
But ultimately, I enjoy this game. There are obviously some flaws here and there, but to Square's credit, they fucking pulled it off, which I did not expect them to do.
Oh, yes.
So
Again, that's what I was getting at earlier, where I feel that they know that 7 is too big to fuck up. Because for many, it was their first RPG, Square otherwise. And
Well, they've already suffered the consequences of half-assing or doing badly at their headline franchise, and the consequences of that were resignations and public apologies. So they
There were
don't want to be
public
there again.
apologies.
Oh,
for-
yes. Final
for-
Fantasy XIV had a public apology
14.
attached to it.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking. You see, the MMOs are so separate in my mind. I thought you were talking about 13 and 15.
I was going to say the first part of 13 probably should have had public apologies. but-
13, they tried to improve, and they didn't quite manage to salvage the thing, but they did do some interesting things with the sequels. But Final Fantasy XIV, yes, it got so bad that they had a public apology, and I think the CEO of Square at the time stepped down. And after that happened, well, something positive must have come of it, because Square's management just became so much better from that point on. Yeah, so. But yeah, a 40-hour game. I had fun from beginning to end. There were a few less than stellar notes throughout, but the lows weren't particularly low, and my God, the highs were so high. So, yeah.
Yeah, this is a fantastic game. The story leaves a lot of people in the air,
Yeah.
for better and
Yeah,
worse.
we need to see where it's going.
And I feel that until we have the full context of everything with future episodes, it's too early to say, was it worth it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
But-
can't
So,
wait
yeah, we'll
for
see.
episode 2 in 2028.
But even if the storyline as a whole winds up not delivering the way we hope it will, at the very least, this game delivered a lot of great character interactions and world building that I think do, on their own, at the very least, enrich Final Fantasy VII's universe by quite
Honestly,
a lot.
like, that was the best part of the game from what I saw. I mean, I haven't played it. I can't say a word about the gameplay. But, like, honestly, that's all I kind of really wanted, was a Final Fantasy VII where the characters had more time to breathe. Like, that's it, really. That's all I really wanted. And those moments were legitimately great. As I said before, though, it's when the whispers and timey-wimey, not timey-wimey, but you know what I mean, stuff is where I kind of start to have some complaints. But most of the stuff was legitimately really charming and interesting. It's just, I don't feel like I want to give Square the benefit of the doubt with this without having seen the final project.
Oh, obviously go into next episodes cautiously, but
yeah.
the fact that this part was done, for the most part, extremely well gives you at least some hope that it's going to be good compared to something like, oh, we have this whole plan to do a bunch of Final Fantasy 13 things, and then 13.1 is just an abysmal disaster.
Yeah.
That's the problem with, that's the risk with starting off something and saying that it's going to be a franchise before you have your
franchise.
first piece out. Like, does anybody
Yeah.
remember the Dark Universe for Universal Studios where they're gonna do all the monster shit? And
Eh.
then they released the Mummy remake with Tom Cruise, and it's so bad that they never did anything again. And then you look really silly for making a bunch of branding for your Dark Universe.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Sounded
So-
like bargain bin World of Darkness Vampire the Masquerade to me, but you know. In any case, there we are, Final Fantasy VII Remake. We'll see where it goes when it goes. It looks like they're continuing to do good work because from what I've seen, Intergrade is fucking fantastic. The Yuffie episode, I mean. So
I uploaded my save data today, so I'll have it when I get when Intergrade comes out.
oh, nice, excellent.
Yep. So we'll see you in like however long it takes for them to get the next part out, which we'll see. PS6 launch hype.